Hello and welcome to this Meet the Candidate interview. John Veenstra is joining us today. He is currently a township trustee serving on the township board. You are a Democrat and you are running on the Democratic side of the ticket in the August primary. Thank you so much, John, for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. So this interview is probably a little bit different than interviews you've done in the past because we had standard election questions that everyone received, and this is more of
about issues.
About issues.
You're right.
And this is more of a get to know you kind of thing.
Happy to do that.
And I'm happy to have you come on and do it. And so you've been on the board for a little bit.
I was first elected in 2004 to the Meridian Township Board.
To the Meridian Township Board.
And re-elected in 2008 and re-elected in 2012.
And hoping to get re-elected again. Okay.
And to get re-elected, I have to get, first of all, the Democratic nomination in the August 2nd primary. Mm-hmm. And 6 candidates filed for the 4 Democratic trustee nominations.
That's right.
So I have to finish in at least the top 4 to get past the August primary.
So let's get to know you before. Which year was it that you were first elected on the board?
2004.
2004. So let's get to know
I
you.
had previously been elected an Ingham County Commissioner back in 1972 and re-elected in 74. So I served 4 years on the Ingham County Board of Commissioners.
Okay, so let's talk about that then. How did you first get involved to want to run for Ingham County Commission?
Well, I've always been interested in the news. I started reading the newspaper when I was in the 2nd grade.
No way. Really?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
I don't know many 2nd graders who are reading the newspaper.
I went through the whole newspaper. When I was sitting on the floor and just lay the newspaper out and
that's fantastic.
Go through all the pages of the newspaper.
What was your favorite part of the newspaper?
Well, they used to have little human interest stories.
Okay.
And I particularly read those. They'd have a little box above a human interest story. Mm-hmm. But as I said, I didn't read every word of the paper, but I went through all the pages of the newspaper when I was in the 2nd grade. So I've always been interested in the news. Okay. And I've always been interested in government. Mm-hmm. And when I first learned there was something called a precinct delegate in 1964, I, of course, immediately ran for precinct delegate. Mm-hmm. And there's both Republican and Democratic precinct delegates. On the Democratic side, the Democrats actually have more precinct delegates per precinct, and generally it's like 4 or 5 precinct delegates per precinct. It's based on the strength of the Democratic vote in that particular precinct. Now, when I first started running in 1964, to get on the ballot as a candidate for precinct delegate, you had to get 15 valid signatures on a petition from registered voters in your precinct.
Okay, yeah.
So, which in some ways is good because first it made you know the boundaries of your precinct. Secondly, you had to go talk to some of your neighbors to get signatures.
And it can be confusing too, where the precincts lie.
But the Republicans got lazy, so they reduced the number of signatures. They first the 5, and then I don't know, it was 3 or something. Now you don't have to get any signatures. All you have to do is file an affidavit.
What was the appeal for you to get on to be a delegate?
Well, the first job of a precinct delegate is you have a vote at your party's county convention. So, and this is good for people to know because the precinct delegate filing deadline is coming up very soon. So if anybody wants to have a voice in the political party, they should file as a precinct delegate. If you don't file by the deadline here in a week or so, you can write yourself in August, but that's harder than filing. It's easier to file now that you don't have to get signatures. It's easier to file than to write yourself in. So by all means file. Now, what that does, I say it gives you 10 times the influence of an average voter. Okay. Because you have a right to vote at your party's convention. And I'll talk about Democratic Party because I'm a Democrat. And 80% of the precinct, or 90% of the precinct delegate spots go unfiled for.
Yes, I've noticed that.
If you file, you're almost guaranteed, it's 99% plus that you will be elected. Once you're elected a precinct delegate, you will get a notice that there'll be an Ingham County Democratic Convention a couple weeks after the August primary. And you have a vote to go there. The official title of precinct delegate is delegate to the county convention. So you get to go to the county convention. And it's been the practice in Ingham County and one of the purposes of the county convention is to choose a delegation to the state convention. And it's the practice in Ingham County that Ingham County says their delegation to the state convention is all the precinct delegates. So filing for precinct delegates means you can vote at the county convention. It also means you'll be able to vote at the state convention. And that meets toward the end of August. And the state convention, well, in a gubernatorial year, the state convention picks the Democratic candidates for lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and the education post. Now, this is not a gubernatorial year, but it means they nominate 2 candidates for the State Board of Education, 2 for the MSU Board of Trustees, 2 for the U of M Board of Regents, and 2 for the Wayne State Board of Governors. And they also can nominate 1 or 2 people for the Michigan Supreme Court. So the state convention has an important role. And then after the November election, there's another county convention that picks the leadership of the Ingham County Democratic Party. And then in late January or early February, there'll be a state convention in the beginning of the odd year to pick the state party leadership. So you have more voice if you become a precinct delegate. And I've always urged everybody, if you have any interest in politics and government, become a precinct delegate.
How do we get, what would be your opinion to get, because it sounds so, you get to vote here, you get to vote there. It could be confusing for young voters or new voters out there. They just registered. They may not understand the process. I mean, what was the appeal for you that you could reach out to younger voters to appeal
first of all,
to do
if anybody has
like
questions, call me on the phone. I'd be glad to answer questions. And the best way to, nobody expects you to be an expert the first time, so the best thing to do is you actually have to file this affidavit with the Ingham County clerk. So if a person has questions about the process, call the Ingham County clerk's office, and a person in that office will be able, or several people, will be able to explain it to you.
And they're very helpful.
Yeah, and so you can get the affidavit form. It has to be notarized, I believe. So you can go to the county clerk's office to file, and they will notarize it for you. Or you could actually even come here to the counter in the township office, and you could get it notarized, and then mail it in, or have a friend take it in, or whatever. But yeah, you have to fill out the affidavit, and it has to be notarized. Other than that, all you have to do is file, and then you'll be told when the conventions are. And best way to find out what happens as a convention is to attend one.
Have you had a most exciting moment that stands out to you for being a precinct delegate?
Okay, I've been a precinct delegate. I've refiled every 2 years from 1964 on.
So you have a most exciting moment. I know you do.
Well, let's see.
Or a few of them. You may have a few of them.
Yeah. Well, the state of Michigan used to have spring elections. And they were abolished by the '63 Constitution. So if you remember 1968, there was a lot of political ferment. There was the McCarthy movement and so on. Well, because the spring elections had been abolished, it turned out that the people with votes at the party convention were people who had been elected precinct delegates in August of 1966.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so here there are all these people
Yeah.
politically active in the McCarthy movement, et cetera, in the spring of 68, and the election had been almost 2 years sooner, which didn't sit well. But so there was political, and I, at my I went in 64, I went to my county convention, and I also went to the state convention. And they were having a little Democratic caucus in a hotel room before the official convention meeting, and the county chair gets up and says, well, so-and-so wants to be our presidential delegate for this congressional, to vote in the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. Because you remember, the people don't elect the President of the United States, the Electoral College elects the President of the United States, and each congressional district gets an elector in the Electoral College. So, Joe Smith wanted to be elector, so everybody in the room, they're standing around drinking. Yeah! So, and he said, well, there's some other spots. A convention traditionally has a rules committee, a credentials committee, a rules committee, and a resolutions committee. Mm-hmm. And so the chair says, well, these other spots, our district will have a person on the credentials committee, rules committee, resolutions committee. Well, I'm interested in the issues. So I say to the guy next to me, hey, isn't the resolutions committee an important committee? Because nobody said anything. So, so I nominate Veenstra for the resolutions committee. So,
just because you said that.
Just because I said that. Now, that was in Bay County. Bay County was one of 6 counties in the, I don't know how many, about half a dozen, in the 10th Congressional District at that time. But it was the biggest county. And that was the old days of boss rule.
Okay.
The county operated on unit rule. So the county chair, I think Bay County got something like 30 votes at the state convention. The county chair cast all 30 votes. Really? Yes.
That's very interesting.
This was in the days before the 68 reforms.
Okay.
In fact, this is classic. The county chair was a guy named Tony Belaski. Okay. And he was right out of what's the guy, NAS, political cartoons? Fat political guy smoked a cigar. Okay. And, I was a young guy back in 64, and he takes me aside and he says, well, you always vote with the leadership and then you get rewarded. And, and so he didn't give a darn about resolutions committee, but he wanted to pick me up as a supporter. So when we get to the Congressional District Caucus, he cast all 30 votes of Bay County for me to be on the resolutions committee. And I beat a political science professor from Fair State University who was probably more qualified. And then afterwards he says to me, you see, John, the unit rule isn't such a bad idea, is it? Oh my God.
How did that influence you? Like future decisions that you made?
I just listened carefully and nodded and thought it was total nonsense. Okay. But I listened and I got some political education.
There are moments in your life that shape you, and that's probably one of them right there.
In 1968, of course, the National Democratic Party put in reforms. This was part of the reform political movement, and the unit rule was abolished and things like that. But so things are, in some ways, they're better than they used to be, but there's still a lot of problems. But let's see. One of my biggest experiences was, so I was, the first convention I ever went to, I was on the resolutions committee, And then I moved to Flint, so I was in Genesee County where I taught, and Genesee County was very evenly divided between the liberal reformers and labor, traditional. And the progressives managed to put me on the credentials committee. Okay, out of Genesee County. And at that time,
what's the credentials committee?
Credentials decides on who's eligible to attend the convention.
Okay.
So they review people's credentials.
I need to know those people.
Yeah. Usually it's just cut and dried, but
Okay.
occasionally there's just dispute about credentials.
Okay.
And that's where that's the first fight in the convention, if there is one, is who gets to attend. Mm-hmm. And in this case, there was the dispute from the 6th Congressional District, which included Ingham County, because if the progressives invoked the unit rule on Ingham County, then they would control the congressional district. So this dispute came to the Credentials Committee about could Ingham County invoke the unit rule on Ingham, could the progressive invoke the unit rule on Ingham County? And so, and labor controlled, I believe, every other, the person on the Credentials Committee from every other district. Mm-hmm. So I got up at the state convention, which is, 1,000 people or something, and I got out on the stage and gave my one-person credentials report in favor of the progressives from Ingham County. And then, do you remember Zoltan Ferenczi?
No, I don't.
Oh, Zoltan Ferenczi was the chair of the Michigan Democratic Party for quite a while. He was also the Democratic candidate for governor in 1966. He was the leader of the state's progressive for a decade or two.
Okay.
Very charismatic guy. Mm-hmm. Came out of Detroit, and he was one of the first leaders to oppose the war in Vietnam.
Okay.
So I remember my friend across the street, Ed Lewandowski, who was Bay County treasurer, and I helped him get elected as Bay County treasurer. He said, "John, I want you to help me," because at that time people used to put signs up on telephone poles.
Oh, really?
Yes, yes.
Ah.
That was the most common election tactic. You put a sign up on a telephone pole.
Wow.
It says, "John, I want you
Can't
to help."
do that anymore.
No.
No.
But John, I want you to help me because you can put the sign high enough up so kids can't reach it and tear it down.
You may not be able to tell, but John's pretty tall.
Yeah, I used to be 6'7". So I helped Ed put up the signs. We went around, drove around.
I can't imagine driving around and seeing political signs on.
Oh, it was very common.
Pole.
It was very common.
Because
and
now
so,
you can only put them in the rights of way, right? There's all these rules where they can go.
That was the practice. You stapled the sign to the telephone pole, to the wood telephone pole. So
those signs were high for him.
So I remember Ed saying, "Well, we can't, remove Ferenczi as state party chair, but we're going to reduce his salary to $1 a year."
Oh my goodness. So then he would want to leave, right?
But anyway, Lyndon Johnson came to the state of Michigan, and he introduced Ferenczi, but he mispronounced his name. So, you should know about Ferenczi because he's part of Michigan's political history.
Okay.
But anyway, at the state convention, I gave this one-person minority report, and of course, Ferenczi lived in East Lansing, so he was out of Ingham County. So then he wants to speak to my report, and he tries to come up on stage, and they won't let him. Okay. They say, "No, you have to speak from the floor, and your time has already started." So then the Voltons hustles back down to the floor and speaks to the mic. But anyway, that was relatively exciting when I gave my one-person minority report to the whole state convention.
Were you nervous?
No.
No?
don't get nervous about
You don't
things
get
like
nervous. I was going to ask you if you've ever been nervous about anything.
yeah.
No, you don't seem. So what did you teach? You mentioned that you taught in Flint.
I taught in high school. Well, my first year of teaching was in Charlevoix, Michigan, in Northwest Lower Peninsula, which had municipal electricity, by the way. I taught physics and 8th grade science my first year. Then I taught in Flint, and I taught, actually I taught math in Flint, and I taught in Frankenmuth, where I taught physics, chemistry, and math.
Okay.
And
physics, chemistry, and math.
And I taught part-time at Genesee County Community College, and I've substitute taught everything from first grade and special ed up through high school. So
And
I'm versatile.
What brought you here to Ingham County?
I came to Ingham County to get my master's degree
At
MSU.
At Michigan State. Okay.
And I never got out of town.
And what did you get your master's degree in?
In political science, naturally.
In political science, of course. Okay.
Right.
And so then you ran, or maybe there's a little gap there to fill, and then you ran for Ingham County.
When I was still in graduate school, after I've gotten my master's, but I was still working on my PhD, which I'd never finished. In 1972, I ran for Ingham County Commissioner.
And where were you living at this time in Ingham County?
I was living in Northwind Farms Apartments toward the west edge of the township, just south of Grand River, just south of Brookfield Shell, if people know where that is on Grand River.
And the precincts were probably a little bit different then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the Board of Commissioners was only created by state law in 1968 and elected from districts. So Ingham County had, at that time, 21 seats on the Ingham County Board of Commissioners. In 1968, the Democrats elected only 3. So it was 3 to 18 Republican. They got up to about 8, I think it was, in 1970. And then I ran. And I ran as part of a student-based slate and so on. And and at that time, Meridian Township included 2 precincts west of Hagedorn on campus.
This is before the township got annexed, right?
Well,
by East Lansing.
Grebner, it made more sense for all of campus to be in East Lansing. So Grebner later did an annexation of those 2 precincts to East Lansing. But at that time, it was North Hubbard, part of South Hubbard, the front of Holmes, and it was Acres, North Hubbard, part of South Hubbard, part of Acres, the front of Holmes and McDonald, and all the way to Owen Graduate Dorm.
Yeah.
There were 2 precincts. And so, first of all, I was very active in voter registration. I always believed in registering people to vote, and I've registered hundreds and hundreds of people to vote. And I used to go to MSU. You used to have to go through the IM building and get your cards and so on for registration. And so I got set up. There were a dozen legal women at one end of the vote room registering people to vote in East Lansing. And then I was at the other end, sitting at a table, the only person registering people to vote in Meridian Township. For those people in dorms, it discovered to their total shock that they lived in Meridian Township.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Because it seems so strange, even today.
Yeah. Well, this is amusing. North Hubbard was men, South Hubbard was women, co-eds. The township line went right through South Hubbard.
Oh.
So I had a list of room numbers for which rooms in South Hubbard were in Meridian and which were in East Lansing.
This could go south badly.
Co-ed comes up to the table.
Yes.
And says, I want to register a vote. Where do you live? South Hubbard. I say, where in South Hubbard? Well, 4th floor. Why do you want to know that? I say, no, I have to know your room number.
Oh, no.
And I get a, fish-eyed stare. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no way, right? No way am I telling you
So
that.
then I have to explain, no, the township line goes through house number,
Right.
and these numbers are in
So you have to know.
Meridian. I have to have my list, and these room numbers are in Meridian, and these are not, so I have to know your room number. And I would get it eventually, but I would get some
I could see.
fishy stares initially.
Yeah, they needed the League of Women Voters to be doing that. I could totally see that.
Yeah. But see,
We only have a couple of minutes
Yeah,
left,
yeah.
John, just to let you know.
well, maybe you want other things you want to ask?
Yeah, what's your favorite movie of all time? That's what I want to know.
Favorite movie? I gotta think.
You
about
watch
that.
movies, right? You've seen movies.
I've seen
I know,
movies.
I know
I've
you
seen
have.
movies.
You're a big political guy, but I know that you also,
Well,
you're a big public servant to the township.
I'd
But
have
I
to-
know you've seen a couple of
I
movies.
have to think about. I would say The Grapes of Wrath was a
Grapes of
very
Wrath.
good movie. Woody Guthrie. I'm a huge fan of Woody Guthrie.
You're not trying to appeal to me because my last name is Guthrie, are you? Okay.
Woody Guthrie was fantastic, in writing
Fantastic.
folk songs.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Okay,
and writing
so
a lot of folk songs.
you a book reader?
Sometimes when I get a chance.
Do you have a favorite book of all time?
Couldn't really say.
Couldn't really say.
I like alternate history, a form of science fiction called alternate history.
Okay.
In fact, last night I was reading an alternate history book about the American Revolutionary War.
It's called alternate history, or that is
The genre.
That's the genre. Okay.
Is called alternate history.
That's actually
Yeah.
a interesting subject in our household as well. My son enjoys that type of history as well.
Recommend to him a book called 1632, which the premise is this little town.
I wonder if we have that.
This little town,
1632.
yeah, this
Okay.
little town in West Virginia, by some cosmic events, gets plopped down in southern Germany in 1632, and then the book is all about the impact of these, 20th century Americans having on Germany during the 30 Years War.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna look
they
into
try
it.
to bring democracy to Germany and so on. And if you remember, the King of Sweden was leading an invasion of Germany on behalf of the Protestants, and Germany was all these little tiny principalities. But this is a whole series. There's 1632 and 1633, and it just goes on for. And the latest one I've read is 1636. But yeah, there's a dozen books in this series.
Okay, I know we're
and
out
it's
of
alternate history, and it's very interesting to me.
I know we're out of time, but I'm going to ask a stumper question. This is a real quick last question. You only get to one word answer. That's it. What's your favorite park in the township? Do you have one?
Well, I would say Ted Black Woods because I like to walk in that, and it's close to me.
There you go. Thank you so much, John, for joining me today for Meet the Candidate interview. This has been a Meet the Candidate interview with John Veenstra. He's running on the Democratic side of the ticket for Meridian Township Trustee, and he is an incumbent candidate. Thank you so much for watching.